ActionAid started off as a British charity whose focus was on sponsoring children, individual children, to enable children from poor communities to access schools. Over time, that was maybe about 30 years ago, over time we have progressed from sponsoring an individual child, where you'd find this child would sit in a classroom that doesn't have lights, doesn't have proper chairs, and because the child is sponsored, they have the uniform, they have the books, they have the shoes, but the child at the desk next to them doesn't have those things because they're not a sponsored child. So it progressed from that to funding schools, so maybe building schools, looking at the environment in the school. And then we realized that even that was not sufficient. There was a need to look broader than that, at the community, look at the environment outside of the schools. And so we started working with local communities, trying to build up literacy for women, because we realized that women, mothers, play a major role in education, so building up their capacities. And then we moved on to dealing with vulnerable children who are not in school, so trying to find alternative ways of reaching them, maybe children from pastoral communities, which are mobile. And through all of this, we've had lessons. Now, where we are now, we've realized that in the first place, any interventions need to be done from a perspective of understanding the causes. If there are children who are not in school or who are not benefiting from education, what are the root causes of that? And so there's a need to have a more integrated approach to finding the solutions. And this is why in our strategies over the years, we focused on rights, and we focused now on trying to understand the root causes of poverty and the root factors that prevent development. So the work has progressed to dealing with the individuals or the communities, to dealing with some of the structural factors, dealing with the power relationships, dealing with the relationship between the governments and the citizens, and also at an international level, the relationship between poorer states and richer states within the wider international community. So I think that the lessons for us have been, in order to promote development, in order to fight poverty, you need to understand the causes. You need to work in a context and from the bottom up. So you work with those who are directly affected, because they can actually articulate the problem and interpret the problem in ways that we might not be able to. This is why currently we work with partners, with local communities, with local NGOs and so on, and also with local officials who may, or local teachers who may be able to give us a different dimension to the problem. The challenges of international aid and international assistance is around that, being able to ensure that there is a match between the resources that are available, including the financial resources, and the human resources, and the need. So that goes into the right priority areas. We've learned that in order to get that right, there has to be the local ownership of the programs. The program has to be derived from the context, from the people on the ground who understand it and who can actually get the right priorities. There is no magic bullet. It's not that there's going to be a quick fix to this. No. And issues of development and issues of education, I think it's a fallacy for us to imagine that. But getting the right approach is important, and that is something that we need to quickly fix. So ensuring that, one, we are driven by the right motives, which is about enabling a better life, better education, in this case, for those who are in the education sector, both for the children or the students and for those who deliver education. So looking at the conditions and quality of teachers as well, and ensuring that the resources go to support that. And then having an enabling environment, bringing in all the different actors who can make a difference. In northern Nigeria, we found that there were increased funds that were taken into education, but the funding was not necessarily reaching the schools or going into the right activities in the schools. So what we did was, instead of taking money to give to the schools to have materials, textbooks, and so on, what we did instead was to work with the communities and with the schools, about 40 initially, to build acceptance to have management committees, school management committees, which would include both the school administration, the teachers, and the parents, all key stakeholders. And then through those committees and working with them to build up their capacity to monitor when the funds were released from the central ministry and came down to the state and went down to the district, to the local level, to monitor where the money went. And the result of that was seen in better services, in better conditions. And eventually what was realized by the government was that it would be important to replicate that and to have a policy so that you could have management committees across the country. So with a little bit of money, you find that depending on what you do with it, you can actually achieve something that is at a wider scale, but also brings in the actors who have a stake in this issue of education. While you need champions and individual leaders, you also need the collective. So it's important to support and work with, or even organize where they don't exist, collectives. It could be, in the case of ActionAid, we had what we call reflect circles, where you bring together adults, women, and so on to learn how to read and how to count, and then through that you also bring in some civic education. It could be that there already exist groups like farmers groups or cooperatives or trade unions and so on, and you work with those collectives because you need to mobilize individuals, but they have to be able to work as a collective to harness their collective power to deal with these issues and create change in policies. So building up that capacity and helping to link different actors together is the next step that one has to take it to. So even as civil society or as ActionAid, even as an international NGO, we don't work as an individual organization. We work in coalitions, we work in partnership with national and other international organizations and NGOs as well. So all these are ways through which we set up the processes of creating change and of working towards more space and more priority to education.